Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the White Pube podcast. My name is Gabrielle de la Puente.
My name is Zarina Mohammed.
And we are shitting bricks.
I was going to say, we're nervous, yeah? This isn't very girl boss of us.
We, just before this started, I was just saying, God help us, God pray for us in our sins. Amen. Because in today's episode, we are going to be revisiting potentially the most controversial White Pube text in our many years on the internet. The text is called "Are White Girls Capable of Making Art That's Not About Themselves?" and it was published on the 30th of June 2019, and I was the one that wrote it, and I'm so sorry.
No, right. My first question for you is, do you really think it's the most controversial?
I think it was the most controversial. And I don't want us to make light of our nerves going into this. On today's episode, we are going to read the text and then we're going to have a discussion about how we feel about it now and maybe the reaction that we had at the time and just, generally how we might do things differently. I think my nerves come in because I am first and foremost a writer and I get really nervous that I'm not going to say the right thing when I'm speaking because I can't take as much time or edit what I've said. That being said, that doesn't mean what I write is perfect. And this text is an example of that. Oh, Jesus Christ. All the Catholicism's coming through.
Oh my God, the Catholic guilt. No, not the Catholic guilt.
Oh, I just want to get this right and hopefully we can make peace with it.
Exercise. We're going to exorcise
this text. Yeah. This text is the reason that we started to do this series where we revisit old texts because it has been haunting me ever since and I've really wanted to address it and I just haven't felt ready, but now I feel desperately in need of doing that. So I'm going to read it out and don't judge us too harshly. This was years ago and we will explain everything at the end. Okay. Girls, we need to talk. And by girls, I should say that I'm not speaking to the whole universe of us here, but a select few. White, cis, non-disabled, all ages and classes. Maybe not all sizes or jobs though, so make a note of that for later. I'm going to address us lot as capital G girls in this text because I'm looking to speak to the Lena Dunham personalities of the art world, and specifically about how a lot of the art you make is boring to me. Boring, boring, boring. I would like it to stop. I would like it to be better. It's funny, a fellow white once criticised me for using the term white people and white girls because they said I was trying to distance myself from my own identity, which was such a mad call out because their lashing out at me revealed a knowingness for how shit we really are. I feel like Villanelle when I say this. Boring. It is on us to sort ourselves out, so we better at least name it. Yeah, it's a descriptor first, but I'm glad it's also partly an insult, one we should accept and concede. We are responsible for making the world a horrible place, and we categorically need to do more for the people we have marginalised, need to be intersectional, support, finance and vote smarter. So in this text, I'm just talking to the white women of the art world, and in the vein of Hannah Horvath, I'm calling us girls. What I see time and time again are girls whose entire artistic practice revolves around themselves. They might tag a meaning onto something at the end, but more often than not, it just feels like they think they look nice, and so that can be their art for the day. For example, and I'm about to drop a lot of examples, don't I look like a pretty manic pixie dream girl in this photo booth video where I'm crying a little bit for a long time? Emotional labour is real, so by crying into the camera, I'm taking some of that time for myself. Praxis. I've bleached my hair and it is different colours all the time, and that is important, okay? Take a look at this photo series I did of my body looking completely normative and failing to make a statement about the body positivity it's claiming to champion. And check out the way I'm pulling at my bra to make it edgy. I'm doing a performance now where we do yoga together and use selfie sticks to take photos of ourselves from loads of different positions. And oh, did I mention periods yet? Look at this fake blood and glitter on a sanitary pad I framed. I have also hung tampons dipped in paint along a washing line because #womankind and housework is work. Here is a picture of me in front of my art. It's very important you look at me in front of the art. I'm wearing this Forever 21 t-shirt with the slogan Girlism on to make sure you know my very progressive politics, even though this top was not ethically made. Hee hee. In this new exhibition, I've painted all the walls pink. Isn't that a cool idea? Oh, of all the art I've made on my 3-year undergraduate course that I paid a lot of money for, the best is definitely this portraiture series of my boring friends wearing makeup in quirky ways. I've photographed them in some hotline bling lighting to show the world that beauty is just not skin deep. Smiley face. Once at a crit, I showed work where I used Facetune to make my body look ridiculous, to critique beauty standards. Celebrities use it and wow, it's so wrong. There's also these East Asian photo editing apps that make you look really cute with big eyes. So I'm going to print off the selfies I took with it, and that is my next exhibition. Are you coming? In this piece, I have dyed my armpit hair pink because of feminism. I'm a sculptor and all I do is stuff tights so they look like sausages that have gone off. Because when you think about it, tights are like a really feminine material, aren't they? I am doing a durational performance where I pretend to be a pop star and I wear pink dresses, right? And sing while everyone watches me pretend to be self-absorbed because I'm making a point about how self-absorbed celebs are or something. That's it. That's the joke. Anyway, I've also painted myself with my top off and you're not allowed to say anything except nice things about it because I am brave and that's all that matters. Look at my A-cup boobs. I am brave. I'm doing an Instagram residency anyway, and it's so interesting because all I'm doing is posting my face, till the cows come home. I'm getting so many likes. Yeah, this bingo card is full. I'm gonna stop now. In all this girl art, it is as though the artist's interests do not extend beyond their own skin, because their personality is, in fact, themselves. I think 2 things are happening here that get to me, that anger and bore me. The first avenue is this. When girls make this art and think it is critical, it is always perpetuating the thing they are trying to critique. They become the problem they set out to tackle, probably realising how much they enjoy it and how valued it makes them feel. They put on this costume or attitude and think, wow, I look good, don't I? But the reason that feels so good is the white supremacy we created. You're just instrumentalizing it for your own power, vanity, and fame. That's embarrassing to me. Go away. The world has decided girls look best, so this art is so overly self-centered in my eyes. When it comes to vanity, I want to say I don't care and live your life, but I do think it can't half be boring when it's calling itself an art practice. It gets repetitive or something, people never mix it up, take risks, and ugliness is more interesting anyway. Why can't this content just stay on your personal Instagram account though? Like, I don't want to go to a degree show and see your top 5 pics of yourself. We're not trying to bang. Do you think that is interesting? If I like you as a person or I enjoy your style, then I will follow you and keep up with what you do. But in an exhibition, what value does your image hold? Why do you have to impose your image on an audience? Do you think this makes for good art? It truly says so much that as girls we think we hold enough inherent value, that our very image is special, magic, and enough to be art. We don't even hesitate, and we don't realise how other people might never dare. The assumption that everyone automatically cares is what angers me, and it leads me on to the second reason I can't cope with any of this. When girls make this art and think it is radical, it literally cannot be radical. That time has passed. Our period discourse is dead and buried. The actual policies on luxury tax and period poverty need to be dealt with by law, not by your little exhibition. We're over free the nipple conversations, long been white. Nudity is not this exciting, rare thing. It's not radical. In my opinion, leave fat acceptance, happiness, and genuine body liberation to the world of fashion, where writers, fashion organisations, and models are collaborating to change things. Shout out to Bethany Rutter and Navabi. Sex is normal, and guess what? I'm bored of art that makes out it isn't. It's not radical. I want to say leave the sex work / art crossovers to sex workers who make art, but honestly, even then, I have yet to see that done in an especially interesting way. Though, as always, feel free to disregard what the fuck I think. You're not making work to please me, are you? There might not be gender equality in the art world, and I doubt there ever will be, but it is normal and safe for girls to be exhibiting. It is normal for us to be on the lineup. So, haven't we now earned the privilege to not have to make art about ourselves and instead to do something else? Like, come on, paint dogs or memes, anything. Create mad, surreal performances about climate change, or go full fiction and make sculptures of aliens. It doesn't have to be you by you. Why would you want to pull a Marc Jacobs? In visual art, it's like white men don't constantly have to put themselves in their work. They get to talk about other stuff. And I think deep down this text is coming from a place of jealousy that white men have art subject privilege. They haven't suffered the same structural inequality, so they don't have to process those neuroses through their art in the same way other identities do and need to. Isn't that the aim for all of us? For identity politics in and out of art to not be such a necessity? An actual utopia where people are treated equally, so we don't have to turn ourselves inside out for these exhibitions or expose the way so many systems work against us. The thing is, I think with white girl art, it's as though it's lagging behind reality, where a lot of those neuroses have already been dealt with in and out of the arts. We've been saved in so many ways. So to harp on about relatively minor issues through the paintings we make is not only boring, but a bit unnecessary and offensive to everyone else who the world does not respect or value in the slightest. If I'm fucking over it, I wonder how it feels for people of colour, refugees, disabled people, and trans and non-binary people to see selfie after selfie of privileged white girls in exhibitions. Maybe so many white men art critics wouldn't be deriding identity politics in art so hard if white women stopped thinking they could continue to be a part of it and diluting what it actually means for others. I know this is a sticky subject to touch on, but mind I'm saying it with a good amount of agency, having been a victim of domestic violence and a young student who made art about that very experience. I think that even when it comes to our physical trauma at the hands of others, we should be looking to leave ourselves out of it or work through it outside of visual art, because at the end of the day, the systems we enter into in art are staunchly male and violent anyway. Galleries and museums, curation, funding, the market, criticism, art universities, and collections are mostly led and run by men. They hold the power still, and they continue to capitalise on us as subjects. Why give them any more content? They don't deserve your soul. Keep your art to yourself or share it with people who genuinely care and get on a waiting list for therapy. It's better to work it out there. The shit thing is, and the reason I think it's pretty pointless me writing all this, is because I really suspect that regardless of this context or the shitty impact I'm describing, girls will continue to make art about themselves and girl kind's past hardships because they want all the sympathy and attention they can get. They want to indulge in white tears and fragility while they still can, before everyone catches on and tells them to get over it. That scares me. That's why I think it would be more respectful now to more marginalised identities than ours to extract ourselves from art, to hide, and to join men in making art about literally anything else. I have literal sunstroke from this mad weekend heatwave, so I'm ending this now to keep it nice and compact. Before you kick off about me subtweeting your entire practice, please read through this a second time. Read Aria Dean's Closing the Loop from 2016 because she started this convo long ago, and I'm circling back to it now because clearly a lot of you haven't read it. And then take a moment to consider the art world beyond you as an individual. I would appreciate it. Thanks for reading and listening.
Before we start talking about this properly, I will say that we'll link Aria Dean's Closing the Loop, that essay that you mentioned at the end. We'll link that in the little description. So if you do want to read that too, you can read that. I have something to say. I don't think you're wrong about most of it.
Okay, right, let's get into it then, because I was cringing at some of it.
Oh yeah.
But less than I thought I would. So the context for this entire piece is that me and Zarina were invited to Copenhagen for some kind of thing. I can't remember. I've got brain fog now and it's been a pandemic. It's just some stuff. A panel. And we were on this panel. And I can't really remember the order in which this happened, but the person who was running the event had like shown these two presentations about like two different artists, two white women. One was a fat woman who put herself into like art historical scenes, and then the other woman was like a little skinny woman who was doing these like aerobic performances where she held a selfie stick, and that was part of it. And I don't know if it was like interactive, like people could join in with the routine that she was doing or something. But after the end of the presentations, I remember the person running the panel had turned to us and was like really excitedly like, you know, what did you think of these artists? And maybe they were Danish or something, like I don't know what the connection was, but she seemed really excited to find out our opinion in a way that sort of assumed that we were gonna like fucking love the artworks. And I remember just like being like, no, like just because I look like I should enjoy it doesn't mean I should enjoy it, and I don't enjoy it. But I gave like a really messy answer that probably said not, it was just words, and I probably didn't make any kind of coherent point, but it just stuck with me because my answer was such a mess. Like I'm so slow with these things. Like I couldn't answer there on the spot like what it was that was getting to me. It took me like weeks afterwards, and I just sort of like been going over it in my head like a little bit here and there, trying to figure out the problem. And separate to this, I was supposed to write one of our Sunday texts. Me and Zarina take turns every Sunday, like we publish a review or an essay, and it was my week. And usually I write things like way in advance. Like normally I've got things like in the bag, like texts for weeks, and I know what I'm doing and I know what I'm gonna say, and it's all in hand. And for whatever reason, the text that I'd written this week in June, it just wasn't working, and I didn't want to publish it, and I felt really like, oh fuck, what am I gonna do? And it was a Saturday, and it was a heat wave, and I had sunstroke, like I say in the end of the text, and I was like, I need to start again. So I remember panicking. I remember like chugging litres of water, being like, the only thing I think of relevance that I have to say right now is about white girl art, and I'm gonna have to like just quickly fucking get it down on a page. So it was sort of like thinking about it for a while, and then just shit, like quick, gotta write. And I mentioned the context because I've never written a text like that before. I normally write so far in advance that I have like a week or 2 weeks to review what I've done and to edit and to like have some perspective and to think about like who will read it, like what the audience will think, and then to preempt what the audience might have an issue with. And none of that kind of general code of conduct happened here. And I don't mean to say that as an excuse. I just genuinely think that it's insane that the one text that happened to me on is the one text that basically went like viral in the arts. It was like such a stressful time that this text had 12,000 reads in its first 10 days.
Which
and
is mental. Right, that's
like
that was half our audience back then.
Yeah, that exactly. It was really kind of like helped by its clickbait title. All white girls capable of making art that's not about themselves. Yeah. So I think that is interesting to me. And it's part of like, oh God, it's part of it gave me a new fear. Like ever since that point, I have like edited to death, because what if something else like takes off in the same way and I like lose control of it. It's made me be so much more careful, because there are things in this text that I would have said differently, and I sort of hate that it's on the record. When like I even, you know, the day after publishing I felt differently. Yeah.
I think it's right. So it'd be interesting to go through what you would do differently now, because that's the whole point of this revisited series. Like, yeah, going back, clearing out, I don't know, taking back control of the text that we lost our grip on, first of all, but maybe especially for context, because sometimes when a text goes viral, it's viral for a nice reason. Sometimes rare, but please describe the reaction. Is that what you want to do next?
Yeah, that's fine. Like, I think the reaction is part of the issue I had. It like the reaction was born from some of the comments I made that were messy and wrong. So yeah, 12,000 reads in 10 days, mayhem, Instagram notifications through the roof, Twitter, just it was huge. It got to the point where, like, you know, if you typed in the white pube, the next few words would be white girl art, because people wanted to find it. Mostly it was a lot of people agreeing that they had similar issues, or people being able to like laugh at themselves and say like, oh my God, I have done this and I know why I stopped doing it, and this is why. Or I always felt strange about it and I didn't quite know what my issue was, and like this has helped me put that to rest. And that's always nice, because that's what it had done for me. That was the problem I was trying to solve, like learning to articulate it. Oh God. And then that was maybe 99% of people, but it is always like the 1% who are angry, that feel like they're the loudest people and they have the most weight. And it was definitely the case here. So initially the first thing that was picked up on was the comment that I'd said about sex workers. So I'm going to read it out, because like it literally haunts me to this day. I said, sex is normal, and guess what? I'm bored of art that makes out it isn't. Not radical. I want to say leave the sex work / art crossovers to sex workers who make art. But honestly, even then, I have yet to see that done in an especially interesting way. Though, as always, feel free to disregard what the fuck I think. You're not making work to please me, are you? So, people were angry, and I completely, very quickly understood and agreed with their anger. Like, I do not have any place in that conversation. We had messages from people who said that, yeah, we were wrong to bring sex workers into this essay. And we then also had messages from a few sex workers who were Black and Asian who said that like they agreed with it because the dominating artwork that they see made by sex workers in like, you know, major institutions and even smaller galleries is dominated by white artists who work in this like white girl art aesthetic, and for them that didn't feel satisfying. And I always thought, okay, that makes sense, like I understand that, but the next step is like what took me a bit longer to reach, which is that like this white girl art aesthetic that I'm describing, like this prettiness, this like clean, like pink glittery, super femme, like decorative accessories, you know, very polished, very glam look, is something that sex workers capitalize on. And like in a sense it's their aesthetic to do what they want with, because it's so integral to many people's like career. And that took me so much longer to understand. And in a way, like that comment, if I had had the fucking like wisdom and foresight and time to speak to artists who do sex work and sex workers who make art, like, you know, if I'd have spoken to anyone, that might have made like a really interesting part of the essay that like added this whole new perspective and level to like taking back control of an art style and a visual style for your own ends. And that wasn't in the essay because I was fucking stupid, and also I didn't think I knew anyone who was in sex work, and I only afterwards found out that there were people I knew in my life, in my personal life, who are. So it's, I don't know, it's again been such a lesson, and I shouldn't have used that word. Like I don't mean that in the cheesy way, like I am learning, but like I have learned from that moment onwards that if there is something I'm unsure about, because I feel like there is a certain amount of questioning, like, you know, what I write there is haphazard. I you can tell that I'm unsure about what I'm saying. Whenever that has come up now in future essays, I've always like either completely taken it out if I haven't had the time, or I've just approached people who like know what they're on about. So as cheesy as it was a lesson. And I think, yeah, I just didn't realise like how much damage that was gonna do. And I was just like embarrassed that I'd made such like a vague, shitty comment that wasn't necessarily like harmful, but was just stupid and kind of like maybe what's the word? I think I underestimated our power as critics, who, you know, say things that people like believe in. You know, maybe this did more damage than I could ever know because I don't necessarily see the impact of it all. Yeah.
I mean, yes, I agree. I think that for me, that comment about sex workers is, I think, like art made by sex workers. That particular line, I think, is like slightly out of place within the rest of the essay, because it feels like it's you jump over it in a way that I think attempts to like acknowledge something, and you're like, okay, yes, that, but you don't really have time to deal with it. But I think you just, right, see, I don't know if I'm being a complete wanker, but you just said that you've not seen it done in an especially interesting way.
But that interestingness isn't up to me That's what I'm saying. Like, who the fuck am I to judge if it's interesting or not? I haven't got a fucking clue.
Yeah.
Like, I'm almost definitely not the audience, and I will, because of my experience not being in the industry, will not see things like I said about, you know, handling certain aesthetics for your own ends, and how do I say this?
But I think you say that too.
I don't think I think whether I don't think I do. I think it's a mess. I think it's just a mess. Yeah.
I mean, maybe I think it's not worded as tightly as I think you would want it to be now, or even like now knowing that people are going to read it in like a day after publication, knowing that people are going to read that line and kind of feel a type of way, or like have, you know, that it's going to. I think you are flippant with it, but oh god, that was the chair squeaking. Hold on. I think you're flippant with it, but I think I think in my mind, you saying you're like just tell me to shut up. Who gives a fuck what I think? That kind of that acknowledges, I think, in my mind, your lack of agency on the subject. I mean, maybe.
But I think damage was done by me saying like, "Oh, I don't think this is interesting, but don't listen to me." Like I shouldn't have. I just shouldn't. Yeah. I shouldn't have gone there. True. Like I'm being flippant, but I'm again not realizing like the power that we have, and we're writing from this like crazy place where we're being like, you know, I'm giving you opinions, but like, don't come for me, and then people come for you. Well, that's one half of the thing that really sticks with me with this text. The other major part of the backlash, I say backlash, it was one person who like absolutely lost their shit in the DMs in a way that I have never seen before or since. And they were really upset about the comment that I'd made about therapy. And again, I can kind of see where they were coming from. So my comment in the text is like, listen, I think some of us have damage and we want to deal with it through our artwork. But personally, having seen the way the industry works, I don't trust the industry to hold that artwork in a careful way. And I don't feel comfortable when I see other people's damage there, because I don't think it's safe. I think it's like exposing you even more. And you can't trust who the audience is going to be, or the curators, or the collectors, or the critics to point at us, who are going to come in and like read it in a certain way. So yeah, my point in the text was in terms of like this white girl art damage-ish. Not to undermine the shit that people go through, but like this text does undermine the shit that people go through. My point was like, just go to therapy instead, work it out in therapy. And I think I was like hoping that would then free people's heads up to make all this other art that I describe, or aliens and like trees and stuff. So we got a message from someone. We got a series of messages that were like incredibly angry and violent, because they were so angry that we had made that comment. And I think, you know, the level of abuse that they came at us with was I don't know, I really should have figured out how to say this in a sensitive way. I think the level of abuse they came at us with was something that we'd never experienced before, because, you know, they were telling us in detail about the horrible things that had happened to them in their life that I just can't even believe that they told us. In order to say, you know, I need art, so let me have it. And it was really upsetting to read. I can still clearly remember what they said. And I think because of the screaming that they it was like voice messages because of the screaming that they sent us. Like, I almost didn't hear what they were saying. I think I just felt like so afraid at like what they would do next, when really what they were saying, as I've just picked up on, is like, you've got no right to say go to therapy, let me do what I want. You know, I know now that like therapy doesn't cure you. Like, therapy can give you like tools to manage things and manage like a difficult life and manage how you cope with what has happened to you. But like, at the end of the day, it can't go back and like undo the trauma that's already happened. And also like the wait lists. I can't believe I say in this text like get on a wait list, as if like that's a really feasible thing for people. Like, people die on these wait lists, and I hate that I said that. I think I was coming at this text and at that comment from like a really overblown, overconfident, arrogant place, because I had just done CBT and I thought I was like invincible. Which is like so dumb of me. And like, I've since realized how broken that system is. And I know you're shaking your head, but I think that like it is fine for people to make art, and I think it is fine for people to make art about these subjects. I still believe and agree with myself that I don't necessarily think that like exhibitions and collectors and that whole business system is where that stuff should end up. But at the same time, I do disagree with the fact that I was the one that said it. I agree with the content, but I also agree with like a similar issue that I had with like the sex worker comment, where like people have bestowed us with this power, and we have said time and time again, we don't want it. Whatever we say doesn't matter. And at the same time, people have continued to like offer us that power and like affirm it. And I think even though we don't believe we have power, it's still there. And when a text has gone viral ish, not viral in like the real world sense, but viral in like the art world, art critic sense, and one of those comments is like, don't fucking make art about damage, you just fucking go to therapy. Of course someone is going to kick off in the comments, because if shit's not working for them, they're seeing me as saying like, you're not allowed to do that anymore, and they need that. And I agree and I understand, and I, again, since that point, have understood our place better in all of this, as well as the whole subject. And I just wish, again, like the sex worker comment, I just hadn't fucking gone there, because it just wasn't thoughtful enough and it wasn't fair. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It does make sense. And I agree with you on both of those points. Like, this, I agree with you. And I'm not saying this to be devil's advocate, because I don't think that's a valuable or productive space to be in. I think that's a silly, devil's advocate is a silly position to take up, and I don't know why you'd want to do that. I just think I disagree with you about how it affects what you're ultimately trying to say and the value that this text has as a piece of criticism in a cultural sense, rather than like as an art world specific thing, right? Because critics in the art world, right? Art critics write to this very specific, insular thing. Like, critics review exhibitions, and that's like where they spend the majority of their time thinking, right? Like, the critics like think about, like, we review an exhibition, we're going to review a show, we're going to talk about this painting and like its value for like the canon of art history or the canon of the market. But literary critics and like big juicy galaxy brain critics that write about art, they talk about movements, right? Like, there are book critics and literary critics that like spend their time thinking about like the wider trajectory of like culture, whether it be like a kind of literary trend like the sad girl narrator, like when we're thinking about like Tessa Moshfegh and like Mona Awad and like these kind of cultural touch points that are having like flares at any given time. I think, and I know how this is going to sound, so I'm just going to have to like, I'm just going to have to firm it, right, and say this. I think you were young. I think you were young. We hadn't we hadn't quite gotten to grips with the place we had in the discourse. I'm doing air quotes while I'm saying that, like the discourse means anything, right? But like in exactly the way that you describe, people looked at us and said, "You've got power," and we just didn't clock it. It didn't feel real to us, and that's not a cop out. That's just the way it was. That's just a fact. I still haven't really come to terms with that, and that's an active problem. I don't think I want to come to terms with that though, because I think it really like it fucks me up. I think you've gotten to grips with it more because of texts like this, like White Girl Art, like this text specifically changed you, and the way that you think about what you do as a writer and the like effect that you have, right? Like it kind of but I think I'm really struggling to like to I don't know, maybe this is like a personal issue. Like I don't think that those two problems fundamentally negate the rest of what you're saying. I think it's still sound.
But I think I allowed it to negate them. I think those two comments, like, and the backlash, however really minor the backlash was, particularly that one person who lost their shit, I to this day haven't like reshared the text because I felt like it's got holes in it, and if I reshare it, if I put a spotlight back on it, people are gonna look at the holes and be like, oh my god, you left holes in this? What the fuck were you doing? And I think I'm so just self-conscious of that because like I want now everything to be so tight, and like, you know, I want it to be watertight when I put text out, and I'm just so much more conscious of it because of this. And you know, there are things like I could pull out and really like stress test. Like if I'm making comments about how I don't think people should how I don't think white girl art should include people's like trauma, and I don't think people should work that shit out in the gallery because people more marginalized than white girls should have the space to do that. Like, what the fuck am I doing? Because that's all I do on the white pube. Like, all my entire career is like, I'm gonna work these things out that are happening to me and my life, and I'm gonna use art around me in order to refract myself through it, and then I'm gonna write about it, these really private personal things, and I'm gonna make them public for like tens of thousands of people, and now there's a podcast and all the listeners are gonna listen to it as well. Like, I'm doing a very similar thing. I think personally it's a little bit different because the delivery goes from me to my own website that I share with you, and then we control how it's contextualized. But is that a flimsy excuse? Like, am I not just doing white girl art too? Am
No.
I? Am I?
No, right. No, because no, I don't think you are. And I think that's an unfair criticism to levy at yourself because at a certain point, Gabrielle, I think your ability to I think self-evaluation is really difficult because you can either it's difficult to toe a line between like, I'm fine, I don't need to think about this problem, I don't need to look at this problem, like it's fine, I said what I said, did I stutter? Like it's difficult to toe the line between that and I don't know, really like really digging into yourself where you don't deserve it, because
Okay. Yeah.
it's really easy for both of us as people to kind of feel the weight of a problem that we have as heavier than it actually is, because like we think it means another thing. Does that make sense? But I think that doesn't ultimately matter to anyone but us, and maybe that's where it kind of like feels like white girl art. But I don't think anyone else notices this, because it's literally just us and our probs. But I think where this text sits in my mind, and I don't think this is the right place in the podcast to say this, I think this is like a note to end on, but I'm going to say it now anyway. I would like to speak in defense of the polemic. I don't know what I mean when I say that. I think it's just, there is value in just being like, I have a problem with this thing, and this is my problem, and it's not like a perfect, like it, this isn't like a perfect representation of the thing that you're talking about, but it's a perfect representation of like one side of how you feel about it. I think the way that you fundamentally feel about it now, and probably then, was way more complex than you've written about it, like in this one particular one shot text. But I think this text still has value because there is value in the polemic. And in the same way as with like our conversation about the I hate the shun text, where you asked me, is it actually that deep? I would like to ask you if this text was that deep. Not now, but back then, if you recall and remember.
No, I think back then I was I was taking the piss out of all of the shit art that I thought people were getting away with. And I think that's maybe an important part that we should speak about, is like a part of the art that I identify as white girl art is of like very poor quality. It's like poor thought quality, but also just poor production value. It's like really shitty, basic, thin, plasticky bullshit. And it's just arranged in a way that like is palatable, or like especially sweet. So it's especially palatable. But I just never felt like it qualified because it wasn't worked. It wasn't like there wasn't much time spent on it, and it wasn't coming from like a really thoughtful place. It was just vibes. It was like people just getting away with bullshit. Like they're putting a sticker on something and being like, ta-da, like, but not even making the sticker, like the stickers from somewhere else. Like that is sort of the level that I was thinking about it on. And the vanity of it all pissed me off as well. And it was like those two things together felt so insulting, because it was like you're getting into all these places so easily. You're getting into Frieze with all this bullshit. You're getting like written about because you're like a pretty white girl. Like, who gives a shit? It pissed me off that like prettiness and whiteness and like girliness was given people cultural capital and cultural cachet that they could then cash in on a real level, because it just speaks to like the whole system that we live in, and it's not interesting to me. And it still isn't. Like, I just don't give a shit about celebrities, and like none of this stuff matters to me. Like, it's very Zoella. It's like this person never says anything of value or anything new or anything weird, anything that would like make them a specific individual on their own. They just blend into the rest of them. Like, yeah, very factory made bullshit. And it's like you've learned the lines from other people in Instagram captions. It's like you've not had a new thought or an individual thought for yourself. And I have no time for it, because I would rather spend time with better shit, better art.
I think I think what you, yeah, yes to that. And I think maybe what perhaps we didn't have the vocabulary to we didn't have the vocabulary to articulate back then is something that you kind of you mention in like one sentence in the descriptions of like what white girl art is, and you say, I'm wearing this Forever 21 t-shirt with the slogan girlism on to make sure you know my very progressive politics, even though this top was not ethically made, hee hee. I think there you're articulating the fundamental problem with where this category of art sits, and it's that it is fundamentally like liberal, like
it's very Hillary Clinton, all that. And this exists in that realm. I think that's where like it says one thing but it doesn't come through with anything else. It has nothing to back itself up, and it isn't even like so obvious that it's come back round on itself to be interesting. Like, it's just still shit. And what I've not to like big us up or big me up, because I've just remembered you're not a white girl. It's like it's like the texts. I was gonna say the texts that we write, but I mean the texts that I write. The texts that I write, I would hope, are of a higher quality than white girl art. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think
well, like my equivalent.
That's the difference. Yeah, it's like, if I am talking about shit that has happened to me, that is, I think, particularly sensitive. Like, I want that thought to sit within a text that is really pleasurable to read because of the writing itself and the words that I've chosen, and like the order and the structure and the way the text like ends, and the way the ending might reflect the beginning. Like, I want to write a text that I'm proud of, and I want to spend hours working on it, and I don't think that level of work, which is artwork, is put into white girl art.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
I think
it's too fast.
I think that speed or that pace, regardless of like how much time people actually spend on the work itself, like making, fabricating, right? I think that pace is important because, I might sound like a wanker again, but I don't care, but like a different kind of pretentious wanker. I think like that's part of its political position, right? Like it is just like rapid, thoughtless movement without, like maybe it's not about production and like how much time it actually takes to physically make something, but like the amount of time it takes to like mentally process something, like the processing, like the mental production power, right? Like how much time you're like spending fucking mentally chewing on something rather than like physically chewing on something. I don't think white girl art ever takes the time to really think about its position in relation to things like capitalism, like capitalism, to be honest, and the way that it like acts as a complicit participant in that system in a way that like it's maybe unhelpful to point out because no ethical consumption and all that, but like I'm not articulating this well. I'm aware of that because, again, a writer, not a speaker. But because this is like a hot thought fresh off my head. I think like we can now, looking back at like the girl boss, like hashtag feminism, Forever 21 slogan t-shirt, like feminism TM, like we can now look back on that era and see the way that it was a way for we can look back on that and see the ways in which it acted in service to like big corporations and like vested interests and like power. And this is something you touch on, but I don't think I think this is my problem with the text. I think you kind of articulate your problem, but like the wider political problem is kind of in the wrong order. And I think maybe it's in the edit. Maybe it's not about us becoming better writers. We've become better editors. And I think maybe it's the structure of it that, like, I don't think this part of the conversation is useful to or interesting to anyone else except me and you. But I think maybe you should have flipped it a bit, because in the part where you're describing it, you kind of describe the problem and then you describe the political elements of the problem, and then you don't kind of cap that off at the end. It kind of goes around and it says, like, it says some bits about, like, why does it have to be about you, like that internal looking, and like, why does it have to be about, like, why does this have to be the place, like, why does art have to be the container through which you process these heavy, emotional, important, valuable things, because art doesn't deserve it. And it's like, you kind of mention or like skirt around the subject of like power itself, and you say something that I think isn't a complete sentence. You say the systems that we enter into in art are staunchly male and violent anyway. Galleries and museums, curation, funding, the market, criticism, art universities and collections are mostly led and ran by men. But I think it's also about, it's not just about men, it's about power and the ways that white women, white girls, right, in like the vocabulary of this essay, the way that white girls are not just in proximity to that power, but active participants in producing and like reproducing and like containing it within themselves, and like holding on to exclusive ownership of it, like the like, exclusive access to the means of cultural production. I think it's part of that. And I don't think it ever goes there, but we didn't know.
Yeah.
And I don't think we know now, because I've done a shit job of articulating it now, but like, you know what I mean?
But I think like in that little bit that you said at the end, like it reminded me, you know, like we have got the power now, and I really am convinced that like white girls know that they've got it quite good. Like, not perfect, a lot of shit still happens, but they've got it relatively well. They're relatively well off and safe. And I think, as bad as it is, people want to other themselves. We want to other ourselves, or like hold on to special little things for attention, like in a way that is really just crude, and it feels insincere, but it also, in the work that's made, comes off as like what I have been recently calling only to Zarina level 1 identity art. Like, again, it's really light. You're seeing like this one problem. You're not taking a step further and thinking of like the context of that problem. You're not thinking about like the history of that problem. You're just attaching it to yourself and being like, give me attention because this bad thing's happening to me. Does that make sense? It's that's the lightness.
Yes.
And that's the maliciousness that I really have an issue with. I think, yeah, now I could articulate a little bit better, but now, back then, just no idea.
But I think that's right. I think I feel like my last point, I kind of trailed off. I didn't finish that thought. I think that's it, right? Yes, that's it. I think it's the point that you make. I don't know if you actually think this or thought this. I think this was just an easy ending. Yeah. And like, you were heat stroke, like, fine, cool.
Heat stroke, bad.
I know you as a person. I'm not just saying this because you're my mate. I'm saying this because I know you as a person and a thinker, and also my friend. But whatever. You say that it's like white girls should extract themselves so that other people who are not white girls, whoever that may be, you say, I was about to say we, use, you lot.
Stop it, you can't appropriate our cultures already.
I know.
I'm going to cancel you.
I don't have the agency to talk about white girls and your people, but like...
Ew.
But like, yeah, you say you need to extract yourselves from art to hide and join men in making art about literally anything else. But it's so that like, yeah, everyone else can kind of come in and have that presence. I think that is incorrect.
Okay.
I don't think it's about that. I think it's so that like the reproduction of that power, that like representing yourself in this like glossy. It's about breaking that power, right? It's about breaking that like self as image, as commodity, as object, as like I don't know. I think that I'm about to sound like a fucking Islamic fundamentalist, but whatever. I don't think people belong in art. Like, maybe maybe there's a case to be made for like full opacity all the time. Maybe that's the end goal that you need to commit to. That you just need to go to the complete other end of the fucking spectrum and just be like, no people represented ever. Like, but maybe it's just about like self commodification. Like maybe that's what is that's the kind of opacity that needs to be moved towards, right? Like, because that's what you're saying, right? Like you. I'd say we actually, because I think this is kind of part of what I touched on in the problem with diaspora art. There's a way it's really, really seductive. It's seductive because it's profitable, and it can, like, on an individual scale, it can be like individually profitable and also like profitable as like a wider cultural movement for like the individuals participating and for the institutions that like are able to contain this. It's profitable to make yourself other, or like to turn that otherness into subject and like art object. And I don't know. I think saying that that's capitalism is kind of a cop-out. I think throughout this, I've sounded like a crank, and it is a cop-out because it's not just about that. It's about the way that like society and culture at large deal with identity. Like there's a certain language that it slips into, and it's like the base neutral level of it is like, yeah, producing financial capital, and even that sounds like a cop-out. I don't know. I think it is. I think it's just about like making the self neutral. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I don't have anything interesting to say in response, is the only thing.
I have a question for you. Oh, go on.
Okay. You ask.
And I don't know how to word this because I don't have an answer for this in mind. Like sometimes I ask questions and I know what you're going to say, or I'm expecting you to say something. And I actually don't know what you're going to say. Do you think you were the right critic to write this? Like in terms of your identity, but also you as an individual? Like, do you think a white critic should have written this? Like
I think it would have been better if it wasn't me. Yeah. I think so. I think I can only go so far with it. As this conversation is pointing out. Like, and that, I mean that on like a personal aptitude level, but also just like societal and seeing it from the outside. Like I'm too within it. Like I made this stuff. I made what am I trying to say?
You made white girl art. Is that what you're trying to say?
No, I didn't. I kind of skipped it.
I think I did, you know. Like alongside this text we made a white girl art bingo card, and I can check off an uncomfortable amount.
Yeah. Do you want to read what's on the bingo card?
Oh yes, please. And shall I tell you which bits I ticked off, or shall I just
Definitely.
tell you how many I ticked off?
I think as you go through, you need to tell us what you did.
I should, as a caveat, say that I am consistently embarrassed of every single piece of art I made ever, not just the white girl art, all of it. If you think you saw my art, no, you didn't. Okay, so white girl art bingo, one by one. Dyed armpit hair. Any art about periods. I made that.
Did you? You did this? What did you do? What did you do? Oh my god, please tell me.
I just included a tampon in a sculpture one time on foundation. Like, it's not that deep, but it is embarrassing.
It's on the list, yeah. That's
yeah,
really
it counts. Body image collage from magazine cutouts. Kind of. I use this aesthetic. look at me in front of my art. This isn't just white girl art. This goes for like
This is fucking
identity
everyone.
art. Identity art level 1. This is applicable. So of course I've done that.
Yeah.
I rinsed that. I banged that out. Foundation, first year, second year, third year, after graduation. But I'd like to say I knew what I was doing. I don't think I did. Exhibition walls painted pink. Look at my A-cup boobs.
Have you done that, Serena? Really?
Yeah. I think I have. Yeah. Look at my thigh gap. Absolutely.
Oh God, help us. I can't remember what's on this degree show bingo, so as you read it out, I'm just like, wow. Wow. I was so right. I take back everything I said.
See, this is sometimes why I think that actually writing a long form text, you could do it better in a meme sometimes. Because this bingo card is correct.
The bingo card is often all you need to do. Because, like, the most fun part of this text for me, before it got all messy and all the holes appeared, was just the paragraph at the beginning where I describe all the white girl art I'm categorizing. Because that in itself is my methodology, as we can see through these bingo cards. I've done so many of them.
There's more. So, stuffed tights as sculpture. Hotline bling lighting.
You've done that.
I've done that.
I've seen that.
Crying. Oh no, forgot about that.
Crying selfie.
Crying selfie. But that was on purpose, right? Whatever. Fruit that looks like genitals. I have not done.
Good.
Video singing to the camera.
Oh, you've done that on the white pube.
Bad makeup on purpose. Underwear and fabric dyed different skin tones. I've not done that. I've not done either of those things. Glitter and webcam selfie. Webcam selfie I have done.
All of these
I think
things,
I've got
like,
bingo.
You've got bingo. I just skipped it. I was just like, I'm going to paint trees. I'm just going to paint trees and pigs. I'm going to paint shit. I just never thought about it in the same way. It's really fascinating that you lived the white girl art life that I should have lived.
But I think in the way that you describe, like, I think what I was doing wasn't white girl art. I think it was just level 1 identity art, because I think the system that you're not the system, the category that you're describing is wider than just white girl art itself. But I think you hit on like the top of your problem with it, and you try to describe the shape. And I think, Gabrielle, I hate that this podcast episode has been you airing a problem with a perfectly good text that just needed an edit. And like, I hate, first of all, I hate the idea that like, I don't know, I don't want this podcast episode to be like, here are all the problems with my text, bye. So like, devil's advocate, yeah. But then also 2, I don't want this to be a podcast episode that like white girl artists that do make white girl art that don't really have any of the get out clauses that you've now mentioned, and like have kind of like that don't fall through the holes that you've described that exist within the text. Like, there are white girl artists that like make this work, don't have the get out clauses, don't have the like it still stands. And I don't want them to end this podcast episode thinking, well, it's fine then because like Gabrielle has a problem with it, and like, you know, she's mentioned that she's a white, because that was, I think, majority of the backlash was just loads and loads of white girls feeling really uncomfortable for the first time in their lives.
Do you know, right, this might be an interesting way to like round this off then. So one of the artists whose name I won't mention, but who I was referring to in the paragraph where I described like all the different types of white girl art that I have seen with my beady eyes, this artist got in touch with us maybe about a year after the text was written. And this was an artist who I had thought, like, I can see what you're doing with your practice, and I think you want to criticize like the figure of the white girl art. Like, you're basically criticizing like Barbie but what you're doing is just becoming Barbie, and I think you're just enjoying playing that character, and you're not actually being critical because you're not really subverting anything. You're just like performing it and then absorbing it. So this artist got in touch with us a year or maybe longer after the text came out and said, hello, you know, I hated this text when it came out. Like, I really couldn't stand it. I was really upset. And now I see what you were saying. And since I've, like, come to terms with what you had said in this text and, like, why you had made points about, like, what's critical and what isn't, I've stopped my performance. And actually I'm going to, like, go back to the drawing board and, like, figure out, like, what I actually want to do as an artist that isn't this. Because that character had become, like, so much of their identity as an artist. Like, it was one and the same. And they stopped their Instagram account, which had been posting all the performances. And I think the link on Instagram was the link to this text. It's something that has, like, really, really stuck with me, because it's very, like, validating as a writer, but also, like, someone just kind of, like, agreed with me so deeply and understood and, like, really took on board the points that I was making, even in this, like, messy, angry, silly meme way, and, like, changed. And it takes so much for people to change in life. Like, it's so rare that people, like, listen to something and change their opinion or change their literally their business. So I was, like, fascinated by that, and I will never forget that happened, because, like, just as much as that person was screaming at us in Instagram messages, someone else was, like, really quiet and really listening and really reading and probably rereading, and they did something about it. And I always thought that was really special. Yeah. So it's not all doom and gloom, Zarina.
It's not all
I changed somebody's life. But I really respect them. I really respect them getting in touch and telling us that. It was really cool.
Yeah. I think that's a nice note to end on, because I think, I don't know, wanting to change the shape of, like, the culture you're writing about as a critic, I don't think that's about vanity or ego. I think maybe it can, like, look like that sometimes, and it can be that sometimes, but I think this is a difficult thought. Potentially edit this out, because this might be just good for you and I, and, like, maybe this is, like, something that I was gonna say it, whatever, like, but this might not be relevant to this conversation specifically, but I think sometimes I really understand when, like, other critics, you know how we're, like, subjective, yay. I really understand how, like, objectivity can be, like, a useful tool for the critic. Because sometimes it's literally not about you, and you just want to, like, yeah, you yourself, like, it's important, it has informed this perspective that you have, like, the life that you've lived and the experience that you've had, yeah, but, like, I don't think you said, oh, white girl art is shit, because, like, I don't think you asked the question, is white girl art, like, are white girls capable of making art that's not about themselves? I don't think you've asked that because of, like, a personal grudge or, like, a personal distaste for it. I think it comes from, like, a wider sense of, like, this is objectively bad. This is objectively, on an objective level, like, fundamentally, structurally, like, structurally, critically, institutionally, like, all the descriptive ways that it could be, it's bad. It's not a good idea to try and replicate power just because you want to try it on like it's a pair of shoes. Like, and I think writing about it, maybe that's where I don't know if I agree with this. Maybe it would have been more useful, or it would have been better received if you'd written about it in a more objective way. And I don't think you should have had to do that. I think I hate that I want to ask that question.
I see where you're coming from, and I think maybe that just would have happened if I'd have written it at a later point, or I'd have written it with more time, and I could have spoken to more people, and I could have like slightly zoomed out more, and been a bit less like, if I could have been a little bit less facetious as well.
Oh no, I
like it
don't
because
say
it feels
that.
like old school white pube, but you know, I would have also loved it if there had not been a backlash for my mental health.
Sorry, I'm like, do you know what? I'm like, maybe I'm aware that this is like your text, but like I want to speak in defense of it because I love this text. Like, as a fan, not as your collaborator, as a fan of GTLP, I fucking love this text. I think it slaps. I think you said what you said, but like I understand the whole. Yeah, cool. Like, yes, I know. Please don't cancel me. But I think you did say what you said, and you're right. And I think there is a role for that facetiousness. I think maybe it needed to be coupled with like a kind of, I say this lightly again, don't take this seriously, with like an academic approach as well.
Yeah, I agree.
I think you could have done
where did this
work.
start? Where did this, have we always done this? Like, did Tracy Emin not like kill it and it's dead in a ditch? Like, why are we still doing all this shit? Maybe there's a second text to be written, and maybe this revisiting episode isn't enough. Like, I would quite enjoy going through and finding that like more objective position that's not completely objective, but like slightly like brushing shoulders with it, to figure out like the lineage of where this shit has come from and why it still matters today.
I would love that. Yes.
Because it feels quite writable, and you know, I've like done a lot of the work of it already in this episode. It just needs an edit like the original.
I think it does. And I think it's not just that would be nice for you as like a personal redemption arc, like the big bagged critic learnt her lesson. What a teachable moment. Moral of the story is, because I think that's like, we've outgrown the age of the like influencer like notes app apology. Like, that's not like a compelling, thoughtful, that's not the end goal of like pointing out problems with people's public thinking, right? Like, the apology is not the point. The point is to like do what needs to be done, like tie up the loose end. And I think tying up the loose end isn't like figuring out where the hole is. The loose end is the thought that you started, like answering the question, are white girls capable of making art that's not about themselves? Or something like, I think you started answering this question, and this was a good first stab. But it's not it. It's not like answered the question the right way, but it wasn't ever gonna be, because even I do this all the time, and I give myself more grace in a way that you haven't afforded yourself, and I hate that for you. That's why I'm like dead, like, I feel very agitated.
I can tell. You're like shaking on the screen.
I know. I'm like, this isn't a visual episode, but I'm flailing. Like, this is like, I think the way that I've tried to write about racism and the institutional interaction with like artists of colour, and that is like the widest area of interest, like across the spectrum of like my writing on the white pube, like not just the art thoughts and like the big thinky essays, but like I've had so many stabs at trying to say the same thing, and I've probably only said it once in a way that I would stick with and be happy with, and even then I'd still like to maybe tie up some loose ends. Like, you're never going to get it right the first time, not even the second or third or fourth, because I don't think that thinking is ever finite. Like it's too big. It's too big. It's on a scale that's like not human. It's not us. It's not an individual scale. And like you just got to keep having. This is gonna sound again really wanky, and it's not useful for anyone other than us. But like writing is a process. It's just like it's not like you can never like pin down your thought and be like, this is what I think, and that's it forever. Like there's no point. It's a process. Like you just got to try and figure out where you stand now and accept that like even once it's published the day after, you might think like, oh, like, I was wrong. And I don't think that's ever been something that we've tried to do. Like we've never thought that consciously, but we've never clocked, you know what I mean? Like we just need to like actively clock that, like, I don't know. You need a couple run-ups. You need a redo. And that's the benefit of being the white pube on the internet, on the website, because you can just take this down.
That is something I was thinking about. Like, why have I never deleted it? Like, maybe I knew that there was still value there, and I was never ashamed enough to like just scrub it. But
I don't think you should. I think
there'll be a second text at some point. Maybe after some reading to make it very strong. This has been a very long episode, so we should wrap it up. I'm really glad we did this. I'm very glad we did this. Thank you for listening. If you have stuck all the way to the end, this was like mine and Zarina's like most dreaded episode ever, but it's gone quite well. I feel like I said what I meant. Watch us get like some angry DM, and I'm like, I didn't mean what I said.
You said what you meant. I don't think I have so much more to say. I have a polemic of my own.
Well, maybe you write the next one.
Absolutely not. No way. Because you've asked me to write level 1 identity art before, and I wrote something absolutely not the point.
That's true. Well, yeah, again, thank you for listening. Thank you especially if you are one of our supporters on Patreon, PayPal, or Ko-fi. We have a really nice Discord server where like anyone who's supported us can congregate and hang out and chat about texts and shit. It's been really nice, and we would love you to join if you want to sign up on Patreon, Ko-fi, or PayPal. Thank you for listening, and we will see you on the next episode of the podcast. Now let's play the really good jingle. Bye.
Bye.
White.